Hello and welcome to a TAXtv special. You are either watching us on the TAXtv website or on YouTube probably. And I'm joined here in the studio by David Winch, who is I always love to introduce you as a money laundering specialist, which makes you sound like somebody who could be very useful to know.
Thank you.
In fact, of course, we are talking the other side to money laundering, the stopping it happening rather than the encouraging it. The reason for talking today is that an awful lot of our viewers have said, what's the big deal really? Why is this such a big problem to us? Surely we're doing enough by simply, if we've known them for 20 years at the golf club, surely we know the person, they're not doing anything wrong, we know they're basically a good guy. Why do we need to be worried about this? And we do hear stories of, threats of prison, threats of all sorts of things.
Yep.
Where are we with it? I mean, is it as big a deal as we are making out, perhaps?
I think there's two sort of aspects to it, which ought to be two sides of the same coin. Perhaps they're actually not, but we need to attend to them both. One is that there is simply a set of regulations that say you have to do these things, and so we have to do them. And the other side is that there is a lot of crime going on. There's an awful lot of tax evasion and so on, which as accountants we used to. But there was also other sorts of crime going on.
To give a sort of example to what we're really saying here, I was reading an article the other day that if somebody offers you a product that's less than half price, it probably isn't the real thing.
McCoy.
And so quite often an advisor will be well aware of the fact that their client is selling a few things on eBay maybe, or doing a couple of deals just to help out a friend here and there. Is that money laundering? Is that something we need to be worried about?
We need to have made sure, if you like, that we have covered ourselves as accountants in terms of if a problem arises with a client, they might have some sort of investigation, not just from Revenue and Customs, but from perhaps the police, perhaps from trading standards. I do a lot of criminal cases myself. I've got one on at the moment involving the Environment Agency, where a man allegedly had a hole in the ground which people tipped stuff in, and they paid him for it, and he didn't have a permit, and it's a crime, and it's involved a prosecution in the Crown Court and questions about where did the money come from, where did it go, how much did it cost, what should he have paid in terms of permit fees. All sorts of questions start looming up, and I'm thinking that his accountant probably had no conception when he was doing the accounts that these sort of questions could arise, that people could be involved in his affairs who are looking at it from a totally different perspective. We as accountants are concerned primarily with tax and with accounts because of tax and with saving tax and so on. What we're not thinking about is what would happen if somebody else came with a completely different agenda and a completely different point of view and started looking at all this stuff? Might there be a problem? And unfortunately, the sort of cases I deal with in the Crown Courts are those sort of cases where I'm thinking some poor accountant here has been totally unaware of all this stuff going on. And then some police officer might turn around and say, well, why didn't the accountant pick this up? Why didn't he query this? Is the accountant perhaps as dodgy as his client? Is the accountant actually putting his client up to things that he shouldn't be? Now, I don't think for a moment that there are more than a handful of accountants who are actually dodgy people in that sense. But if the authorities have that sort of suspicion, and if they feel they've got to look into an accountant, then that's going to cause the accountant grief.
So accountants and advisors generally, of course, need to be aware that, and it's interesting something you just said there, it doesn't have to be the obvious money laundering route. It doesn't have to be that there's money hidden offshore. It doesn't have to be that there's a theft involved or something like that. It could be that there are environmental issues, that you're aware that a criminal act is occurring because they don't have the right permit for something. It could be that you know perfectly well that a restaurant is employing various family members who don't have the right paperwork to be in the country, and that would again be an illegal act which they are profiting from, and therefore an accountant or an advisor should, if they were aware of that, should of course report it.
Yes.
But also it could be that once the other prosecution agencies, if you like, find out about it, then suddenly it comes back to the accountant and they're saying, well, should you not have spotted this? I guess a phrase that I'm going to sort of throw in, really accountants should almost be doing a moral audit at the same time as a paper audit. They should be saying, well, does that really ring true to me? Am I happy that this guy's offered me a pair of trainers that don't look quite right? Is it right that I've been, in that situation, advisors need to know the right procedures to follow, I guess.
Yes, I think you have to have just a sort of, if you like, a residual back of your mind alertness to the possibility, could there be something seriously amiss here? Could something dodgy be going on? And if there is, just do a little bit of digging to satisfy yourself that it isn't, hopefully, and then you've covered yourself. But at the end of the day, we may need to show, particularly to our professional bodies, that we're actually in touch with the requirements of the regulations, that we've actually recognised them, we've actually at least tried to comply with them. And okay, we may have some dodgy client who seemed all right to us, there was no indication at all of anything wrong, but actually under the surface, hidden away from us, there was all sorts of stuff going on. That could happen to anybody. What is a concern, though, is that if you've got an accountant who's perhaps not doing any of these checks at all and is just not aware of these sort of issues, if he gets one dodgy client, then word may get around and he may actually accumulate a number of dodgy clients without realising it. And then if you get the police involved and the police look at the client list and see all these names that they recognise, they're going to start thinking, why are all these villains going to this particular accountant? And it starts to look bad.
So we need to make sure that the accountant doesn't become known as the accountant that doesn't ask questions.
The government is looking to the professional bodies, the ICAEW, the ACCA, ICAS and so on, to enforce these rules by way of civil penalties. And the good news for the professional bodies is that whilst the government is looking to them to enforce these rules, it's also saying that you can keep the money that you extract in penalties from your members.
So let me get this right. So before we had a situation which was a criminal offence, which we never really saw happening, to be honest, because
it was never prosecuted.
Never prosecuted
because it's too much work.
Just hassle.
Yes.
And really, the police have bigger fish to fry.
Absolutely.
Than worry about that.
Yes.
What we're now saying is that the various professional bodies have been told by government, it's your responsibility
yes.
to make sure that your members are fulfilling the obligations under money laundering.
Yes.
Those that aren't, you should penalise.
Yes.
And if you penalise them, you can keep the money from that.
Yes.
So bizarrely, we're now in a position where the various professional bodies can actually make a profit from, and not for 1 second saying they will set out to do that, but we're currently in a world where a lot of people are worried about the revenue, suddenly deciding that penalties are a very interesting way of making money.
Yes.
What we're saying is that professional bodies could easily find themselves in a position where they are, let's just leave it at, they are more motivated than the police would have been to have a good look at whether advisors, whether they are sole practitioners, partnerships, corporates, LLPs, or one person by themselves or a huge office, they are much more motivated to go into those offices and say, show me that your staff are trained, show me that you take money laundering seriously, and make sure that we are satisfied. So as far as these penalties are concerned, I mean, are they relatively low, quite big? How does it work?
Actually, there's no limit to the amount of the financial penalty. So it's up to the professional body to set the penalty they consider is appropriate.
So it could be that the ICAW come in for a general review of your work. You've got all your audit files tidied up. I guess you also now get your HR files tidied up as well. And if they decide that you have not done what you should be doing, then the penalty could be literally limitless. It could be as much as they want.
It could be. It's meant to encourage you and encourage others to get it right next time.
David Winch, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Obviously a very important topic, not the standard tax affairs that we normally look at on TAXtv, but certainly something that is concerning a large number of people. You will find on the screen at the moment 2 website addresses. One is for David's own business, where you can get some additional help with money laundering should that ever prove to be necessary, and also the TAXtv website, so you can have a look at what we offer in terms of money laundering training. But for today, from David and myself, bye-bye.